Hello, my name's Annabel McGilvray and I'm the Director of Communications with the Australian Institute of International Affairs. I'm here today with Ambassador Ong Keng Yong, former Secretary General of ASEAN and now Deputy Chairman of the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies in Singapore. Thank you for joining me, Ambassador Ong.
Thank you.
I guess I'd like to ask some questions regarding ASEAN, in particular, as that's why you're in Australia right now, in relation to the Australia ASEAN Summit.
Yes.
In particular, I guess, what can you say about the international criticism that was directed towards ASEAN in relation to the Rohingya crisis recently and the lack of response from ASEAN?
Well, I think the criticism is not unreasonable, but to say that there is a lack of response, that is not quite responsible. I feel that the ASEAN work on the Rakhine crisis, where the so-called Rohingya problem has now hit international headline, has been quite consistent, our ASEAN effort. Our focus right now is to deal with the humanitarian crisis. We cannot handle the political and the other strategic dimension of this issue right away because there is the strong Myanmar national position, and then there is different opinion inside ASEAN and around the world about how to tackle this Rohingya issue. However, the suffering on the border, the movement of refugees and people across the frontiers require us to take immediate action. So our effort is really to minimize, in whatever way we can, the violence against this affected population, and to try to find a way to make sure that shelter and food is provided as the political leadership goes about doing their diplomatic work and their discussion. So we have an ASEAN Humanitarian Center which have moved supplies of food and other things into Myanmar, to Rakhine State, and we engage the Myanmar Authority in facilitating more relief supply going in, either from the ASEAN Humanitarian Center or from other NGOs and other ASEAN bodies which desire to move in to help.
So I guess that feeds into criticism that's sometimes made of ASEAN or the drive for change in the way ASEAN approaches its role. And earlier this week, Marty Natalegawa, the former Indonesian foreign minister and strong advocate for ASEAN, suggested, of course, once again, that there is need for change.
Of course.
And given your experience with ASEAN and between 2002 and 2008, or 2003 and 2008 as Secretary General, can you give us some sense of what the prospects are for change within ASEAN?
First of all, change will be inevitable. The question is how quickly can we execute some of these ideas. I believe that the ASEAN leadership from all 10 countries have been discussing this continuously. And they would want to put into place some of these discussion, have some practical action. So one of the practical action that we have developed over the past few years is to make sure that our ASEAN Humanitarian Center can respond quickly to natural disaster as well as man-made disaster. But in operationalizing some of these action in a specific moment in time, there are always complications like political differences and whatnot. Secondly, we are actually embarked on what we call ASEAN community building, which involve us accepting more and more the work of civil society, the world NGOs. And so in this Rakhine crisis, we see the role of NGOs, civil society becoming more prominent. And it is not possible for ASEAN country to ignore this trust of the civil society and NGO. we hope that it could be much faster. We hope that there can be more political dialogue so that a political solution can be found quicker. But given the complication of all these issues, right now our emphasis is to reduce the suffering by the affected population and make sure that no more violence is taken by the people in charge against all these people. Basically, food and shelter is our basic objective now.
I guess you mentioned the ASEAN 10. Is there the prospect of becoming an ASEAN 11 with Australia as a member?
We wish. But Australia is a dialogue partner of ASEAN, and in many ways it is like a partner for our ASEAN community, because Australia's links with ASEAN are not just connected to political and economic. There is a very substantial amount of people-to-people linkages. The problem, Annabel, is that, ASEAN, we basically represent the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. And we have other countries all around this ASEAN neighborhood. Australia is one. And then to the north, we have Japan, China, Korea, the two Koreas. And then to the west, we have India and so on. And of course, the United States of America is a Pacific power, so they are around us all the time. If we look at the role of Australia in a more formalized manner, then all our other friends in the region would also want themselves to be similarly treated. So what we have decided to do is to focus on the substance of this dialogue partnership between Australia and ASEAN, to make it more concrete, to make it more widespread, and so that all sectors of our respective population will benefit from it. And I think if we avoid this idea of having a formal membership of Australia in ASEAN, it will help to stabilize our ASEAN relationship with every big countries in the region. But that doesn't mean that we are minimizing the role of Australia. Australia is very substantially involved in Southeast Asia, and ASEAN countries fully appreciate the various initiatives and, more importantly, the political as well as the moral support that the Australian people and its government have given to ASEAN. So going forward, we will do more substantive stuff. We don't want to be bothered by this formalization that is being advocated in some segment of our public opinion for a ASEAN welcoming Australia as a full member. What's in the name, yeah? But we like to focus on the concrete day-to-day cooperation and collaboration between ASEAN and Australia.
So there's no prospect of an announcement this weekend?
About Australia coming into ASEAN, well, we will announce that Australia and ASEAN are great partners, and we will do more together. Yeah, and I believe that this is something that we should look forward to, and there are really many things that we can do together. It's not the issue of Australia, it is the issue of ASEAN construct and how ASEAN need to manage its relationship with all the other countries wishing to have a piece of the action in Southeast Asia. So we hope that our Australian friends will understand that and appreciate that it is not in any way a classification that Australia is less of somebody else, Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Ong, for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. If you would like some more information about international affairs or analysis of current events, please go to www.internationalaffairs.org.au or follow us on Facebook.